In this video, I'm going to give you a few reasons why the OPPO 203 is our preferred 4K Blu-ray player for reviewing televisions on the HDTV test channel and website. Hello everyone, my name is Vincent Teo. I'm a TV reviewer and professional calibrator. A few months ago, I did a comparison video between the OPPO 203 and also a Panasonic UB900 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray players, and I demonstrated the slightly better chroma upsampling of the Panasonic UB900 and also the significantly superior HDR to SDR conversion of the Panasonic player versus the OPPO 203. However, as the months gone by, I found myself using the OPPO 203 more and more, and a number of subscribers have asked me why I kept using the OPPO 203 rather than the Panasonic UB900 for reviewing all the televisions on this channel, and I'm going to give you the reasons why. The first reason is obviously Dolby Vision support. The OPPO 203 supports Dolby Vision, whereas the Panasonic UB900 will never be compatible with Dolby Vision. Now, Dolby Vision is a proprietary dynamic metadata technology that is developed by Dolby Laboratories, whereas HDR10 is an open standard HDR format that is found on most HDR content, such as Ultra HD Blu-rays and also streaming from the likes of Netflix 4K and Amazon Prime Video. Here's the thing, there are a number of Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray titles that have been released over the past couple of months, and also I need to be reviewing Dolby Vision compatible televisions such as this LG 65-inch B7 OLED TV that I have sitting here. I have a few Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray titles across there, namely The Fate of the Furious, Power Rangers, Despicable Me 2, Transformers The Last Night, which is actually playing on this TV now, and also Resident Evil Vendetta. And I need to be reviewing these movies and also these displays, which is why I need a Dolby Vision 4K Blu-ray player. Now, the thing about the OPPO 203 is that in the UK, it is actually not the only Dolby Vision compatible Ultra HD Blu-ray player. There's also the LG UP970. But the OPPO 203 can be forced to only output HDR10 rather than Dolby Vision from a Dolby Vision disc. Now I'll explain how it actually works on a Dolby Vision disc in terms of the HDR10 base layer and the Dolby Vision enhancement layer. So on a Dolby Vision disc, there's always a HDR10 base layer that is mandatory as specified by the BDA or Blu-ray Disc Association. And on each Dolby Vision disc, there is an extra Dolby Vision enhancement layer. Now, to make up the Dolby Vision signal, the HDR10 base layer needs to be reassembled with the Dolby Vision enhancement layer to constitute the final Dolby Vision signal that is eventually sent and displayed on the television. So some people have asked me whether I think a couple of weeks ago I did a comparison video between Dolby Vision and HDR10 from an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, and people started asking me whether the improvements in color, in contrast, in gamma or EOTF in terms of the tone curve is due to different grading for Dolby Vision and HDR10. In my opinion, probably not, because whatever affects the HDR10 base layer will also affect the ultimate Dolby Vision signal, because the Dolby Vision enhancement layer and the HDR10 base layer needs to be combined to make up the final Dolby Vision signal. So let's say if a colorist was sitting on his mastering monitor and looking at all this content, trying to grade the HDR10 delivery, if the colorist tries to increase the shadow detail, it will also affect the Dolby Vision layer, because the Dolby Vision signal derives its data from both the HDR10 base layer and the Dolby Vision enhancement layer. And is it worth it for a studio to actually grade HDR10 and Dolby Vision differently? Probably not, because you have to hire extra colorists. There's more time involved, more archiving, more assets, more inventories. It's just a nightmare to handle. So I think it is very, very unlikely that a Dolby Vision delivery will be graded significantly differently from a HDR10 layer. To show you this in action, the concept of HDR10 combined with the Dolby Vision enhancement layer constituting the final Dolby Vision signal, I'm going to just play a scene here Alright, I'm going to show you that this is actually in Dolby Vision, by the way. So if I actually go here, you can see that this is actually playing in Dolby Vision, Transformers The Last Night. So if I actually play a certain scene here, let's say if I actually fast forward it. So if I started fast forwarding it, and then if I started playing it, you can see that it actually brightens up. So what is happening when it's fast forwarding is that the Dolby Vision signal cannot be reassembled in time, but once you pause it and started playing back, then the HDR10 base layer is combined with the Dolby Vision enhancement layer to provide you with this final Dolby Vision signal, which is why the output actually brightens up. This is what the Dolby Vision mapping engine and the title tells the television to do. Now the cool thing about the OPPO 203 is that you can actually force it to output HDR10 and not play the Dolby Vision enhancement layer. And the way to do that is by, normally you can do it by just pressing the HDR button, but because if I actually press it here, you can see that HDR setting is not adjustable for Dolby Vision content. So what we need to do is to actually stop the playback, go into the setup menu. So let's go into the setup menu. And then under video output setup, HDR setting, we switch HDR to forced. And then after doing that, what you need to do is to do a power cycle. By power cycle, I mean you need to actually switch off the machine and then you switch it back on again. Okay, so you can see that it's playing in HDR, which is the HDR10 format rather than Dolby Vision. So this is a way for you to actually force your OPPO 203 to either playback in Dolby Vision or HDR10 if you wanted to actually compare between the two formats, whether you can see any improvements or not. But for me, it is extremely useful because when I did the Dolby Vision versus HDR10 comparison video, some people was questioning the validity of my comparison because I didn't use two OPPO 203 players. I used an OPPO 203 and a Panasonic UB900. But the fact of the matter is I actually went to the trouble of preventing Dolby Vision from playing from the OPPO 203, just play back the HDR10 portion, and then I compared the HDR10 output on the screen versus the Panasonic UB900 HDR10 output on another 65-inch LG B7 screen, compare them side by side, and I'm satisfied that the HDR10 output look very, very similar from a normal viewing distance. So I think that comparison is 100% valid. There's no question about it. If you want to actually question the validity, go and find yourself two LG OLEDs and two OPPO 203, 2 copies of Power Rangers, and do it yourself. Right, let's get back to the OPPO 203. And the first reason why I continue to use it for all our TV reviews is because of Dolby Vision compatibility and the fact that you can actually manually switch between Dolby Vision and HDR10 playback from any Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray disc. Okay, so that's reason number one. Reason number two is that as part of my reviewing process, especially since I am doing lots of side-by-side comparisons with another competing display, I tend to pause a certain scene. Let's say if I actually go to this chapter again, if I pause the scene, okay, let's say if I decide to pause the scene and I analyze the contrast, the colors, compare it against another TV that I'm actually reviewing. Now, the thing with some of these OLED televisions is that if you pause a scene for too long, the screen will actually slowly, gradually dim down their light output over time. This is a protective mechanism to prevent burn-in or screen burn or prolonged image retention. So on some of these televisions, namely the LG 2017 OLEDs and also the Panasonic OLEDs, they will actually gradually dim their screen over time if you display a static image for too long, and this is a protective mechanism. There are ways to actually bypass this in the service menu on the LG OLEDs, but another way to actually get around this matter is just to use a playback loop, and the OPPO 203 has this fantastic feature called the AB replay feature. If you actually, let's play this, so if you actually press the AB replay button once, it will start the loop and it will continue playing it, and then if you want to stop the loop, you just press it again and it will become B. and the footage will continue looping from the starting point to the ending point. And this way you can actually try and see from a moving content the differences between different screens. I'm talking or let's say if you are not a TV reviewer, you are just a normal user or an enthusiast, when a friend comes around and you want to replay the same scene over and over again for demonstration purposes, you can use this fantastic function on the OPPO 203. So that is reason number 2 why I keep using the OPPO 203 for all our TV reviews and all our projector reviews. Okay, to stop this looped playback, all you need to do is to press the AB replay button again, and then it will just continue playing. Let's get back to the title screen because I don't really want to spoil this movie for you and I don't want to receive any copyright infringement notice. Okay, so that is reason number 2, this AB loopback function, which is extremely helpful. And the third reason is the source direct function. I've explained this before in my previous video, but just to recap, there is a way on this machine, this 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player, to ask it to play the source natively rather than upscaling it to 4K. So if I press the source function, source direct function, you can see that there are a few functions here: auto, custom, and source direct. So what source direct does is that if you play a normal Blu-ray, a 1080p Blu-ray, the source direct function will ask the player to output in 1080p, and then the upscaling will be done by the television. And as part of my TV reviewing procedure, I normally test scaling from either standard definition sources or high definition sources. And it is very, very useful for me to actually just ask the player to send the standard definition signal directly from the player to the screen, so that I'm testing the upscaling capabilities of the television rather than the upscaling capability of this machine. Let's say if you play a DVD, just a box standard DVD in PAL regions such as the UK, it is going to be in 576 resolution. So if you actually set this resolution function to auto, what the player will do is to actually upscale it to 4K before sending it to the television. And there are 2 reasons why this is not really desirable. First of all, the upscaling on the OPPO 203 is decent, but the upscaling on most of these 2017 televisions that I've tested is extremely good. So the upscaling on the television is generally better than the OPPO 203. Also, as part of my reviewing procedure, I want to test the upscaling of the television and not the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player. And the third reason is this. This is an extremely important reason, and some of you may not actually realize it. If you actually ask the player to send a 4K signal to upscale any, let's say, sub 4K signal, let's say from a 1080p Blu-ray or a DVD, if you ask the player to actually upscale it, then the final signal will likely be in a high bit depth, high chroma, and in 4K resolution. So if your cable, not all HDMI cables are equal, so if your cable run is very long or is not premium certified, such a signal may not be able to get through completely to the screen, causing occasional handshake issues, occasional flickering on and off, things like that. If you actually ask it to send a source direct signal, it will send either only in 1080p or in 576 for a DVD, 1080p for a Blu-ray, which means that the bandwidth required is not as large. So the HDMI cable, even if it is an extremely long run, can successfully pass through the signal completely to the screen for it to be displayed. And one thing that I actually wanted to point out is that some people are actually getting flickering or handshake issues from the home screen of the OPPO. So let's say here, now if I actually set it to source direct, right? If I actually set to source direct, it will only be outputting it at 1080p, which is significantly lower bandwidth. But if I actually ask it to output it at, let's say, auto, then it will be 2160p, which is 4K resolution, maybe even at 50 Hz. And this, because I'm using good cable, and this LG B7 OLED has sufficient bandwidth to process this correctly. So you don't see any handshake issues or any flickering. But let's say if your display is less capable, or if your cable run is extremely long, or you're using an old HDMI cable, then the home screen, because it is of such a high bandwidth requirement, may actually start flickering, or there might be handshake issues. It may turn on and off and things like that. I find Source Direct a very, very useful measure to actually avoid all that, to actually prevent all these handshake and syncing issues from the HDMI port. So those are the three main reasons. Other reasons are in terms of the usability. So when I actually play back any content, let's start playing this again. So let's get to a certain scene here. So let's say if I actually start this scene here. So as part of my reviewing and calibration process, sometimes I have to actually fast forward to a certain scene, and I do that by obviously pressing the fast forward button on the remote control. Now the OPPO 203 and many other Blu-ray players, Ultra HD Blu-ray players to be fair, they actually tell me the chapter number on the LED display here, so that I can actually immediately know where I'm actually going to. But the Panasonic UB900, I think this is something that Panasonic engineers should take on board and address for future players, is that there's no way for me to actually find out the chapter that I'm playing unless I press a few buttons on the remote control. So the LED display on the Panasonic UB900, it doesn't actually display the chapter information, and also there's nothing on screen to actually display the chapter information. I don't know whether they have actually addressed this in the latest firmware update, but when I last used it, certainly the chapter information is actually not displayed on screen. So I have to actually manually click one chapter, look at it, process it to see whether that is a chapter that I actually want to go to or not. And then if it's not, press the button again. Whereas with the OPPO, it just allows me, because the information is just readily there. I know that in Dark Knight, I like to use chapter probably 18 or 19 to actually assess the skin tones. I can just directly go to it, which is very, very helpful and very, very efficient. Another thing is the fast forwarding and the chapter skip process. On the UB900, it is actually fairly slow. There's always a slight delay, and sometimes when you press the previous chapter button, it only goes to the start of that current chapter, whereas what you want to do is to go to a previous chapter. So with the OPPO 203, it seems to intuitively know what I actually want to do. So whenever I press the chapter button 2 times in a row, then it will just go very, very quickly to that particular chapter. So those are the reasons why I like using the OPPO 203 so much for reviewing all the TVs that I get in for testing. And I hope that you have learned a few things in terms of how to force HDR10 playback from a Dolby Vision disc, how to do an A/B reloop, and the reasons why Source Direct may be useful. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.